Crowds don't see individuals. They see patterns. Those patterns collapse into archetypes, and once assigned, they are almost impossible to escape. You don't choose your archetype consciously. You earn it through repeated signals. There are three that matter. The first is the naive. This is the most common role and the most exploited. The naive believes crowds are cooperative environments. He assumes shared goals, mutual respect, and good faith. He leaks constantly emotion, availability, morality, then wonders why he's ignored, burdened, or quietly sidelined. The naive thinks visibility equals value. In reality, it marks him as infrastructure, useful, replaceable, safe to step on. Naive men are rewarded early with inclusion. That's the trap. They're invited, praised, kept close. Not because they're respected, but because they're predictable. Over time, their autonomy erodes. They become emotional utilities, absorbing stress, doing excess work, carrying blame. When pressure hits, they're sacrificed without ceremony. The crowd doesn't feel guilty. The role allowed it. The second archetype is the operator. This man understands the scan. He doesn't fight it. He navigates it. He controls leaks, delays reactions, limits availability. He speaks less than expected and moves later than others. The crowd never fully places him, and that uncertainty protects him. Operators are often mistaken for aloof or quiet. That misreading works in their favor. Because they don't declare morals, others project onto them. Because they don't explain themselves, others fill in gaps with assumptions, often favorable ones. The operator is not dominant by force. He's dominant by ambiguity. But understand this: operators are not safe by default. They survive because they adapt faster than the crowd updates its model. The moment an operator becomes lazy, expressive, or emotionally invested, he slides backward. There is no tenure in hierarchy, only maintenance. The third archetype is the predator. Rare, but always present. The predator doesn't leak because he feeds on leaks. He studies the naive for extraction and the operator for competition. He is patient, observant, and emotionally flat in public. Not because he lacks emotion, but because he weaponizes it privately. Predators don't announce dominance. They let others self-select beneath them. They offer opportunities that create dependency. They reward loyalty until it becomes a liability, then withdraw support without explanation. The crowd often confuses predators with leaders. Sometimes they are. Often there's something colder. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Crowds protect predators. Not consciously, but structurally. Predators stabilize hierarchies by exploiting excess. They remove weak links. They concentrate power. The crowd benefits from the order, even if individuals suffer. Now the critical realization: you are already in one of these archetypes in every public environment you enter. And you are not perceived the same way across all of them. A man can be an operator at work and a naive in social spaces. A predator in one room, invisible in another. Most men never audit their assigned role. They operate from self-image, not external reading. That's why they feel confused when outcomes don't match effort. The crowd is responding correctly. You're misreading the game. Archetypes are sticky because crowds resist reclassification. Once you're labeled naive, every action is interpreted through that lens. Assertiveness becomes aggression. Silence becomes insecurity. You have to exit the environment or endure a long period of controlled inconsistency to shift perception. This is why power is easier to maintain than to build, and why first impressions and unresolved hierarchies are expensive. In the next chapter, the threat deepens. You'll see how these archetypes played out historically and how small public signals preceded demotions, purges, and quiet eliminations. not theory, receipts. History doesn't record intentions. It records outcomes. And again, the men removed from power weren't the weakest, they were the most exposed. Machiavelli wrote in an era where courts were crowds with knives hidden behind etiquette. Advancement required proximity. Proximity required visibility. Visibility required control. Those who misunderstood this sequence didn't lose arguments. They lost positions, alliances, sometimes their lives. Consider the pattern. A rising figure gains favor through competence or loyalty. He becomes expressive, grateful, vocal about values. He signals alignment too clearly. The court learns his limits. Once mapped, those limits are tested. Then exploited. Cesare Borgia's enemies didn't fall because they were less capable. They fell because they revealed impatience, moral certainty, or emotional hunger in public. Borgia let them speak. Let them posture. Let them show their hand. Then he moved once the crowd had already turned. This pattern didn't die with monarchies. It migrated. In modern institutions, public failure is rarely sudden. It's preceded by months or years of signal accumulation. A man speaks too openly in meetings, shows frustration at the wrong time, aligns himself publicly with the wrong principle. He thinks he's being courageous. The crowd reads him as inflexible. Once labeled, he's no longer groomed, he's managed out. Corporate purges follow court logic. So do political downfalls. So do social exiles. Watch any scandal carefully. The removal is never about the stated offense. That's theater. The real decision happened earlier when the individual leaked too much and became unsafe to keep. The scandal is just the permission structure. Even revolutions obey this rule. The men who shout slogans earliest are rarely the ones who rule afterward. They reveal their hunger too clearly. They become symbols, not sovereigns. Once the new order stabilizes, symbols are liabilities. Machiavelli warned against appearing virtuous when virtue creates predictability. Mercy, honesty, generosity, these traits were to be used sparingly and strategically. Not because they were bad, but because public consistency creates exploitable expectations. Crowds punish men who confuse morality with power. Morality without leverage is decoration. And decoration is removable. Human nature hasn't improved. It's been disguised. Social media turned crowds into permanent courts. The scan never ends now. Every post, reaction, and public stance becomes archival signal. Men are demoted algorithmically before they ever notice resistance. What looks like cancellation is just accelerated selection. The crowd didn't suddenly become cruel. It finally had enough data. Notice who survives public storms. Not the most righteous. Not the most emotional. The ones who said the least. Explained nothing. Withdrew without apology. Silence protects optionality. Noise collapses it. This is the deep threat. Once your public signal profile hardens, correction becomes almost impossible. Apologies don't erase it. Explanations reinforce it. Defensiveness confirms it. The crowd doesn't forgive. It recalibrates your ceiling. Most men think danger comes from enemies. Historically, it comes from audiences. Enemies act. Audiences decide whether action is allowed. Machiavelli didn't teach cruelty for its own sake. He taught asymmetry. Reveal less than others. Commit later than others. Attach to outcomes, not applause. The lesson is brutal but clean. Your downfall will not come from what you hide. It will come from what you reveal too early, too publicly, too confidently. Now that you understand the threat, the question becomes operational. What behavior actually changes the outcome? Not ideals. Not intentions, strategy. Once you see the scan, you stop trying to win approval inside it. You start managing exposure. Signal discipline is not self-improvement. It's damage control. It's the removal of behaviors that give others leverage over you. You are not becoming better. You are becoming harder to read, harder to place, harder to consume. The first shift is delayed participation. You do not enter conversations early. Early speakers define themselves too quickly. They anchor positions they haven't tested. Power moves last, not first. Silence is not absence. It's reconnaissance. While others reveal, you collect. The second shift is emotional compression. You don't eliminate emotion, you store it. Public emotional expression is rationed, not spontaneous. Anger, excitement, agreement, humor all become tools instead of reflexes. When you finally display emotion, it carries weight because it's rare. The crowd recalibrates. Third, non-explanatory action. You stop narrating your decisions. You do, then you let reality justify it. When questioned, you answer narrowly or not at all. This creates a subtle inversion. Instead of you defending your choices, others begin adapting to them. Explanation invites debate. Action closes it. Fourth, controlled availability. You are not always reachable. You do not fill silence. You do not rescue stalled interactions. When something is scarce, people adjust around it. When you are constantly present, people lean on you. Dependency is not respect. Fifth, value silence. You do not publicly announce principles, boundaries, or loyalties. You demonstrate them selectively, in private, where reciprocity can be measured. Public values are constraints others will test. Undeclared values remain flexible. Sixth and most important position over expression. You never ask, how do I feel about this? In public environments, you ask, where does this place me? Feelings are internal data. Position is external reality. Confusing the two is how men talk themselves out of leverage. This discipline feels unnatural at first because you've been trained to equate expression with authenticity. That training serves systems, not individuals. Systems want legible participants. Sovereigns require opacity. You will notice resistance when you apply this. People will call you distant, guarded, or changed. That's feedback, not a warning. It means the old version of you was predictable and the new one isn't. Uncertainty unsettles those who benefited from your leaks. Understand this clearly. You are not trying to dominate crowds. Domination attracts challenge. You are trying to become unnecessary to challenge. Uninteresting, unreadable, quietly immovable. This is how men survive long enough to accumulate real leverage. They are not impressive early. They are still standing late. Signal discipline buys you time. Time allows alignment with stronger players or exit from weak environments. It allows you to choose battles instead of being drafted into them. It allows you to remain selectable on your terms, but this discipline requires a cost. Most men avoid the death of the expressive self. The version of you that wants to be seen, validated, understood. That identity cannot coexist with sovereignty. In the final chapter, that identity is dismantled and replaced. This is where most men stop, not because they disagree, but because the cost becomes real. You cannot apply signal discipline while keeping your old identity intact. The expressive self resists extinction. It wants credit. It wants recognition. It wants to be known as good, loyal, competent, moral. That desire is the final leak. So it has to die. Not dramatically. Not publicly. Quietly. Public death means this. The version of you that seeks affirmation from crowds is no longer allowed to operate outside private territory. You do not perform your values. You do not showcase your intelligence. You do not display your intentions. You let others underestimate you and you do not correct them. This feels like loss because it is. You are surrendering a false form of power, the illusion of influence through visibility. In exchange, you gain something colder and more durable. Sovereignty. Private sovereignty is internal alignment without external declaration. Your standards exist whether they are seen or not. Your decisions are made without needing applause. Your self-concept is no longer negotiated in public. Once this shift completes, several things happen automatically. First, your emotional economy stabilizes. Crowds no longer control your state because they no longer validate it. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't penetrate. Both require buy-in. You've withdrawn it. Second, your strategic range expands. Because you are no longer signaling who you are, you can move between environments without friction. You can observe without committing, agree without aligning, leave without explaining. This flexibility is impossible for expressive men. They are trapped by their own declarations. Third, selection pressure reverses. Instead of being constantly evaluated, you become a variable others must account for. People speak differently around you. They offer more information than you give. They test less aggressively because they don't know the cost. This is not dominance. This is non-consent to exploitation. The crowd will never congratulate you for this transition. In fact, it may subtly punish you at first. Less attention, fewer invitations, reduced emotional access. That's withdrawal from dependency, not loss of value. Men who confuse the two crawl back to visibility. Men who understand power let the distance widen. Machiavelli warned that men hate those they cannot read, but they fear them more. And fear, unlike admiration, does not require maintenance. At this stage, your internal dialogue changes. You stop asking how to express yourself and start asking where to deploy yourself. You stop measuring days by interaction and start measuring them by position gained or avoided. The final illusion to destroy is this: that being known is safer than being unknown. History proves the opposite. The most durable figures were opaque until the moment opacity no longer mattered. Public death is not loneliness. It is insulation. And once installed, sovereignty compounds. Fewer leaks, fewer enemies, fewer obligations, more optionality, more exits, more leverage. You are no longer auditioning, you are selecting. There is no graduation from this process, no finish line where vigilance relaxes. Selection is not an event, it's a condition. The moment you believe you're safe, you re-enter the scan as prey. Here is the final warning most men never receive. Power is not stolen from you, it is returned to the environment. The moment you stop defending it. Crowds don't overthrow sovereigns. Sovereigns decay into civilians, then get processed like everyone else. You will be tempted to relapse. A promotion. A relationship. A moment of influence. Comfort whispers that the rules have changed. They haven't. The environment only tolerates discipline while it's enforced. The instant you start explaining again, reacting again, signaling again, you reopen extraction points. Watch men who had it all and lost it. The pattern is always exposure before collapse. Too many interviews. Too many statements. Too much visibility. Too much moral performance. They believe their position insulated them. Position only amplifies signal reach, it doesn't forgive leaks. Understand this. The crowd is patient. It will let you rise while you are useful. It will smile while you overexpose yourself. It will wait until removing you costs less than keeping you. When that moment arrives, the justification will sound reasonable. It always does. This is why elite operators do not chase mass approval. They cultivate small, asymmetrical alliances, private leverage, exit routes, redundancy. They assume every environment is temporary and every audience is conditional. If you want a single operational rule to carry forward, take this one. Never give a crowd more information about you than it needs to function around you. Information is gravity. The more you give, the more tightly you're held in place. You are not here to be understood. You are here to remain unconstrained. This path is not popular. It will cost you casual intimacy, surface-level praise, and the dopamine of being seen. What it gives back is rarer, freedom of movement, resistance to manipulation, and the ability to choose when and if you reveal yourself. Most men will reject this message, not because it's false, but because it demands something they won't surrender, the need to be liked. That rejection is the final filter. If you're still here, understand what that implies. You are not looking for motivation. You are looking for insulation. You are not trying to win crowds. You are trying to outlast them. Remember, visibility is a currency that devalues with use. Silence, properly held, appreciates. Selection never stops. Make sure it never finishes with you. You were taught that crowds mean safety. That belief is the first weakness to surgically remove. A crowd is not a collection of equals. It is a compressed hierarchy forming in real time. Every room becomes a marketplace of status, fear, leverage, and extraction the moment more than two people are present. The mistake naive men make is assuming neutrality, believing that simply standing among others grants invisibility. It does the opposite. Density accelerates evaluation. The more people watching, the faster judgments are made, the harsher they become, and the less forgiveness exists. Crowds do not protect you. They expose you. In isolation, your flaws are private. In crowds, they are amplified. Your posture, tone, reactions, timing, emotional leakage, everything becomes data. And data is currency. Someone is always collecting it, even if unconsciously. Someone is always ranking. Someone is always deciding who leads, who follows, who can be pressured, and who can be discarded without consequence. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. Power never emerges in solitude. It is forged under observation. Princes fell not because they lacked strength, but because they misread the environment they were standing in. They treated courts as social spaces when they were arenas. They spoke when silence was required. They revealed alignment when ambiguity would have preserved leverage. And they assumed goodwill where selection was already underway. A crowd is an ecosystem under stress. Resources are finite. Attention, approval, opportunity, protection. When resources tighten, selection sharpens. The crowd begins to behave like a pack. Not consciously, instinctively. Eyes track weakness. Ears catch hesitation. Predators do not need malice. They only need contrast. The man who stands out incorrectly becomes the release valve for collective pressure. This is why being yourself fails in public environments. Authenticity is a luxury afforded only to those with power already secured. For everyone else, it is unpaid labor that benefits observers. When you reveal yourself without control, you donate leverage. You tell the room how to position you. You advertise how much pressure you can withstand before folding. You signal what you need, fear, value, or avoid, and crowds punish exposed need. The modern myth says crowds reward confidence. The older truth is harsher. Crowds reward calibration. Loud confidence attracts attention. Controlled presence commands space. The difference decides who is tested and who is deferred to. Most men confuse visibility with strength. Visibility is simply exposure. Strength is the ability to remain unread while others project onto you. In every crowd, three forces operate simultaneously. First, scanners, those who unconsciously assess others for dominance, threat, or usefulness. Second, aligners, those seeking protection by attaching to perceived strength. Third, opportunists, those watching for imbalance, waiting to exploit the moment someone reveals too much. You may not see them. That does not exempt you from their judgment. Your emotional reactions matter more than your words. Crowds forgive silence. They rarely forgive emotional leakage. A delayed response, a defensive laugh, a rushed explanation, these are not human quirks. They are signals. Signals announce rank faster than credentials ever could. And once your rank is assigned, everything you say afterward is filtered through it. Understand this shift clearly. The crowd is not there to understand you. It is there to classify you. Once classified, reversal is rare. First impressions calcify because crowds outsource thinking to consensus. If the room senses uncertainty around you, it compounds. If it senses control, it defers. This is not morality. It is mechanics. Nature operating through human behavior. Chapter 1 is not about fear. It is about accuracy. Until you see crowds as arenas of silent selection, you will keep mistaking exposure for connection and honesty for safety. The lens must change before any strategy can work. Otherwise, you will keep bleeding signals without realizing who is collecting them or why your outcomes never change. Humans signal before they speak. Always have. Always will. The tragedy is that most men signal against their own interests without realizing it. You are conditioned to believe signaling is communication. It isn't. It's confession. Long before language, organisms survived by broadcasting internal states: fear, submission, aggression, readiness. Those signals kept tribes functional. They also made weak members visible. Civilization didn't erase this system. It refined it. Now the signals are subtler, faster, and far more exploitable. The modern crowd still runs on ancient wiring. Your nervous system is optimized for belonging, not sovereignty. It wants to be accepted because acceptance once meant survival. That impulse leaks through micro-behaviors, over-explaining, premature agreement, nervous humor, visible discomfort with silence. None of these feel dangerous internally. Externally, they read as availability for pressure. The crowd doesn't judge you morally for them. It reads them mechanically. This is where most men miscalculate. They believe predators require intent. They don't. A person doesn't have to be cruel to exploit weakness. They only need incentive. Crowds generate incentive automatically. When someone appears uncertain, compliant, or emotionally reactive, they become the path of least resistance. Influence flows downhill. Machiavelli observed that rulers fell not from cruelty but from transparency. The prince who revealed fear invited rebellion. The leader who revealed mercy invited challenge. Not because mercy is evil, but because signaling it without insulation collapses deterrence. The signal overrides the virtue. Perception defeats intention every time. Your psychology betrays you because it is honest. Honesty is uncontrollable unless disciplined. When you speak to relieve tension instead of to move position, you signal dependence on approval. When you share personal values prematurely, you signal predictability. When you react visibly to disrespect, you signal a pressure point. None of this requires speech. The body transmits it faster than words can correct it. Crowds are especially sensitive to emotional asymmetry. The man who is affected more than others becomes a stabilizing target. He absorbs projection, jokes, subtle dominance tests. Not because he deserves it, but because his reactions reward it. The crowd learns quickly what it can take from you. Another leak is moral signaling. Men announce principles hoping for trust. In crowds, principles become constraints others use to corner you. Declare loyalty and you will be tested. Declare fairness and you will be exploited. Declare honesty and you will be fed dilemmas designed to trap you. Machiavelli warned that virtues unguarded become weapons in enemy hands. He wasn't cynical. He was observant. Why does this keep happening? Because suppression feels unnatural. Silence creates internal friction. The untrained mind equates restraint with dishonesty, tension with danger. So it discharges. It explains. It clarifies. It reveals. The relief is immediate. The cost is delayed and paid in status, leverage, and future autonomy. The crowd doesn't remember what you intended. It remembers what you showed. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most weakness is not a lack of strength. It is excess expression. You talk too much. You react too fast. You reveal alignment too early. You signal emotional states that should remain private. Each reveal feels small. Together, they construct a psychological profile others operate on. Predators do not need to attack you directly. They simply position you. They let you volunteer your limits. Once your limits are known, pressure becomes precise. You are no longer a variable. You are a fixed asset. This chapter installs a necessary paranoia, not fear, but awareness. You are always signaling. The only question is whether you are doing it deliberately or unconsciously. Until control replaces compulsion, you will keep feeding the crowd information it did not earn. In the next phase, the abstraction ends. The signals become specific, identifiable, repeated, recognizable across cultures and centuries.